good morning and welcome to another Field Focus. This week we're looking at Beyond Your Book, Doors of Opportunity, all those lovely phrases we love to sing here at Book Brilliance Publishing. So today I want to focus on speaking. I want to focus on one of the doors of opportunity that is open to authors, and that is attracting speaking, being booked for speaking gigs that you get paid for. That is the end goal in terms of speaking engagement as an author. So let me just tell you a little story from a woman I spoke to in Dubai. She has this idea of a book. She's been talking about it, and she was asked to speak at the book fair. Unfortunately, she didn't have the book published, so they couldn't have her speak. She missed a golden opportunity within the field of publishing to speak, all because she hadn't yet published her book. So hopefully we're going to make that happen for her so that she then, in the Dubai area, because there's lots of events happening, but all around the world. So people that speak have to be authors at book fairs. When bookers are looking for speakers, one of the first things they will look at, has this speaker got a book? Because why is that? And we know the answer to that, but we have to really take it on board and let it fuse from our head into our heart and into our soul, so that when we speak, we're speaking with conviction. And that is, your book gives you instant credibility because you are a published author. Now, it can work to a certain extent if you're self-published, but it's a lesser extent and very rare. But when you're professionally published with a publishing company, then you're taken more seriously. But what's even more important, yes, it's credibility, but it's also the tool that you can use to ascend your authority straight away. So how do you do that from a book? Is it simply just what you speak about and the content in the book? Well, that's certainly got something to do with it. But what's more important within your book is that you have got someone credible writing your foreword and giving you testimonials. Sure, we can get friends and colleagues. Of course, you can have 20% of that within your book. But when you want to ascend that authority, you need to get someone who is rocking and rolling it within your industry. Someone who's got what we would say a bit of clout, someone that people are listening to, someone that's already got followers, and that when people hear their name, then they're going to say, oh, what's he done? What's she done? Wow. Oh, that's very good. So therefore, I'm more interested now in what this author's saying within their book. So it's like the double-edged sword, and it's a win-win. So it's really important to be mindful who you get to write that forward for. Because when bookers, they'll ask for copies of your book, and they look at that, they're not just going to look at your content, they are going to look at who else is recommending this book. That's why you see on the front of covers of a famous entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are really rocking and rolling, they've got, and it's usually a very short statement, but we'll have New York Times, it will have the Sunday Times, it'll have the Guardian, or it will be somebody who's really high up within that industry, so who's notable. So it's really important. And here at Book Brilliance Publishing, we like to put a little juicy review on the front cover for sure, so that instantly they can see that your book is it got credibility and authority. And then we will do that on the back of the book. So it's important that we then leverage that book in terms of taking you up the ladder in the speaking. Now, quite often you will speak for free in the beginning if you haven't done a lot of it. And that's all right, because you've got to get that confidence. You've got to practice your craft and really know everything that's in your book. You've taken time to write what's in your book. It's based on years and years of education, experience, learning, all of that. So therefore, when we look at your book and we look at the chapter framework, we then can start to see the overarching signature talk that we can work on, and then what are the other 10 to 12 subtopics that you can work on as an expert, because you've got a book with at least 10 chapters, maybe 11, maybe 12, maybe a couple more. It's usually somewhere between 10 and 12. So you then can speak on each of those topics. So therefore, we can then put out in a speaker reel, having your media pack with a speaker aspect to it, so that the bookers and businesses can look at, I'm looking for someone who can talk about resilience. I'm looking for someone who can talk about trauma. I'm looking for someone who can talk about grief. How do we handle that in the workplace? You know, all of these things. So it's very important that you begin to take from your head and knowing, yeah, if I write a book, it'll give me more credible authority. But when it comes from here, it doesn't have conviction. There's an element of self-belief there. But when you really know in your heart of hearts, in your soul, that what you're saying is golden, there's juice in it, it's making an impact, then you are really engaging, you're walking your talk, you've got that vibe, that energy that people will just see straight away the minute you open your mouth, the minute you're writing anything, and they'll see it from the pages within your book as well. So being able to craft that menu of what you can speak on is great. So let me, excuse me, let me take it a little bit deeper, and let's look at, well, speaking, what does that mean? I've spoken about bookers booking you to speak on stages, but let's roll it back a bit. It's every time you speak online, if you're at networking, if you are on a forum, if you're participating in a summit, you need to make sure that that language you're speaking is the language within that book. Do not deviate. I've done it in the past, doesn't work, I know that. But I've learned now that you have to say the same song over and over again. And the more you sing the song, the sweeter it sounds, the more it will land, the more it will connect, the more it will resonate and create an empathetic bond with your reader, your listener, your audience, your client. So it's very important that you consider what you're saying. Do I say it when I go live on Facebook? Am I saying it if I do a little, even if it's a 60-second video? Am I being true to that brand voice? Is my brand personality coming through? Are the stories that I've earmarked within my book, am I using them, or am I trying to pluck a news story out of the air? You don't have to do that. Keep to the same story. I've been in audiences on a number of occasions with the same people, and a lot of what they say, the underlying story is the same. But then what they do is they shift the lens and they come in from a different angle. So it's like a different talk. But the first introduction, always the same, always the same. So I'm learning that just now. And I'm going to come back to, I'm going on a course in May. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you how to do that power statement. Now, you're going to have to practice it. I had an opportunity to say it yesterday and I bottled it. So, you know, I'm walking my talk. When you've got it and it's in your conviction, it just sounds sweet. I remember the first time I said, we're on a mission to make a difference. I thought, well, that sounds like contrived. It didn't sound authentic. But then the more I worked with myself, the more I worked in my field, the more I did what I was doing, the more conviction I got. So now when I say we're on a mission to make a difference, that comes from every pore in my body. But I've now added, we're not only making a difference, we're making an impact, because I know that from the work that I'm doing and from the feedback that I get, and you will too, that you are making an impact. You're seeing transformation if you're in the field where you work with someone and there's a transformation, that is just, and you need to be able to stand in that power. So you need to be able to stand and say, so I'm supposed to be saying something along the lines of, hi, I'm Brenda Dempsey, and I'm a award-winning publisher. We've published over 200 authors and co-authors in 22 countries worldwide, and we, and at first for me, it's a bit icky, and that's okay. It's meant to be icky, right? But eventually you'll get to the point where you're so convicted because you're not saying it for boasting purposes. You're saying it because of what I've just said a minute ago. It's about the impact you're making with the work that you're doing. You're serving others. So when you come and you're serving others to be able to do the same and to make similar transformations, that's not bragging. That's being on purpose. That's being fueled by passion. And that's finding that right message. So there's something else you need to get comfortable with. It is uncomfortable in the beginning, but the more you do it, it's like anything else, the better you become and the more comfortable you will become in saying these words, because you're not saying it from a place of ego. It's coming from heart and soul. When you come from heart and soul, it comes from a place of servant leadership. So so practice that. All these little things you need to practice. So I'm going to be practicing over and over and over again on my video, saying that until it sounds natural and not like I'm apologizing. So if I say that at the moment, my body language is doing this, it's shrinking, it's being apologetic. No, no, you're changing lives, you're transforming lives. Your work is vital to this world. So therefore, you need to be able to say it with that level of conviction. These people aren't apologizing. Stephen Bartlett's not apologizing. Mr. Virgin Man, whose name always goes out my head, he doesn't apologize for being a multimillionaire, because he knows the difference he's made in people's lives, with the work that he does. People can travel, that's a bucket list thing for people to travel. So he's not going to be apologetic. So we need to learn to be unapologetic in our language. Last thing I want to say on speaking, and we do need to go into these in greater depth, and that is being clear on what you say, using powerful language and sticking to the point and on time. So I run a podcast, Brilliance Today. I interview people, I ask them a question, they don't answer the question I've asked. They've got some other idea in their head and they answer that. But if we're live or whatever, we can't go, stop. So you've kind of got to let it run and find an appropriate point to come in and get them back on track. So listening to a question, and the way to overcome that is repeat the question. I interviewed someone who was in the army, who'd got to the status of captain. He's been one of the best people I've interviewed. I asked a question, he repeated the question and answered that question so eloquently. It was breathtaking to listen and watch him in action. And he didn't ramble on and on and on and on. He made the point, he maybe backed it up, and he brought it full circle. So he was very engaging to listen to. So that's something I want you to be thinking about. Now, what I'm saying sounds easy, but go start practicing it because we're human and the brain sometimes takes over. So tip number 1, repeat the question. Number 2, say you get an interview on the BBC. So I've been on the BBC a number of times now, very blessed. However, they ask you a question and you have got 15, 20 seconds to answer that question. They throw questions at you. They don't tell you what they're going to ask. So you need to know who you are inside out. So that's why you do the brand work. I want you to see why I'm asking you to do certain work. Because when you come to being interviewed by the media in particular, it's different if it's maybe a podcast. They're a bit gentler with you, but the media are like, every second on air counts. It's money, isn't it? So it's listeners. They want more listeners to join. So if they get someone on who goes and they babble, you know, that's not going to be good for their ratings, and they're certainly not going to ask them back. So if you get asked back, you know you're doing something right in the way that you're speaking, but we can always improve. So stick to having short, sharp answers that say something really, really powerful. I probably should have had a clip today to send you. So we'll find some clips and put them on school so you can hear short, sharp answers. I will find not just myself, because I'm not perfect, but aspire to be, but people who are really good at it. I'll find that interview with that captain, and so you can hear how he did it, because good teaching is you model what you want people to do. And at first, it's a bit robotic when you're modeling, but eventually you find your own groove, you know, as you do in writing, as you do. Lots of people talk about mindset. Lots of people say the same things. Leadership, they say the same things. You know, you need to have a routine. But how you say it becomes unique because it's the way you say it and the energy you bring to the table. So it's the same when you're speaking in interviews. So if you get a TV interview, you might get 3 minutes, you might get 5 minutes. And if you're lucky, like Anna Archie, I think she nearly got 20 minutes with Eamon Holmes. It was a long interview, but her answers were just short, sharp, and she answered the question. So that's where we want to get to. But we don't want to do it robotic like. We want to do it with personality, you know, so make sure you've got that personality in there. Just be confident. You know your stuff inside out. Sometimes we need to practice it to be better and better and better at it. So, oh, I forgot what my tip number one was. Tip number one, we need to practice. That's tip number two. Forgot what tip number one was. I should have written it down, shouldn't I? Anyway, so you really need to stick to the point. Start. Oh, I know. Tip number one was start with the question and then follow through. Um, be mindful of your time constraints and really come with your personality, because that's what's going to resonate with the the audience. So we've all types. So I'm quite high energy and bubbly. I'm like that. But I know very powerful people and they're very calm and they speak. Listen to Simon Ong. Go on to LinkedIn. Go and listen to Simon Ong. He's very calm. He's very measured in every single thing that he says. And she's another person that you can go and listen to for modeling. He does little 15-second, 20-second videos, and oh boy, they punch. They've got a punch, and that's from your book. You need to find those punchlines, and that's why when we're writing the book, we look at every little paragraph should have a punchline in it, because then you can talk about it. So that and it just accumulates throughout, and you compound. So by the end of your chapter, boy, people are going, wow, look at the value in there. So yes, so you need to bring that into your speaking. So there we have it. I'll come back to this because we haven't even talked about presenting video or anything. There's so much to speaking. It's a subject within itself. But of course, I will share with you all my learning. I've been speaking for 25, 30 years, and we're still learning. It's about, you know, there's so much more. So when I've gone on my 4-day training, bet your bottom dollar there'll be a video series on it on school for you to go and listen to. Okay, that's all I've got to say. Eve, if you got a question, would you like to put it in the chat? I really don't know why my speakers aren't working. Yeah, and that the thing is that is what people you can kind of go on and on because you're frightened of the brevity. You're frightened you've not said enough, and you're just a vessel full of a fountain of knowledge, you know. But it's about picking out what you want to say it. And the other thing I'm going to add: don't be afraid of a pause. Maybe if you've got a 3-minute interview, you don't want your pauses then. But if you're presenting, say something profound and pause. Count to 3 inside and just have a quick scan of the room and look and start again. You know, just that pause, because that allows what you've just said to sink in. Because don't forget, when you're speaking and slow down, and I know I need to slow down, Because when you speak, this comes from my working in special educational needs, people are processing. Not everybody processes language at the same speed. Some people are very slow. If they've got a processing disorder, for example, it's not affecting their cognition, but they just need to, it just filters down slower. I have quite a fast processing, so I have to make myself slow down so that people can really comprehend what you're saying. We'll talk about articulation in that another time, but that's what we've got for today. So Eve, if there's no more burning questions, I'm just going to wrap up now. Oh, how to ask for a speaking gig. Okay, so there's a couple of questions, there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, if you're a professional speaker, you need to be prepared. So I would be suggesting, as you're getting the book, as the book's just coming out, you are preparing yourself to become a professional speaker. If you're going to get paid £5,000, £2,500, £10,000, you better know your stuff inside out with conviction and have not a lot of ums and ahs, have learned all of those things. But here's the coach in me. Just ask. Ask. Ask because you really want to hone that skill. Ask. Do anything you can, even if you're not getting paid. I spoke at an online women's summit. I'm not being paid because I know I'm helping this women's CIC. And it's experience for me, and more people are hearing my story, and then they want to connect, and then they want to write books. Great, job done, you know? So you want to be paid in the long run, but it's more than money when you become a speaker. It's more than money. It's raising your profile. It's the ascension of your authority. It's gaining more credibility, more followers, potential clients. It's getting rebooked because you wow a crowd. It's all of those things. So I would say just start, practice, 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 and practice in short little. That's why I say do 15-second videos. Take a point, give an example, round it up, 15 seconds, done. 30 seconds. Let the short videos are the great ones to practice. If you can make a point, give an example, and round it up with a tip and a call to action at the end, all within 60 seconds, you're doing brilliant. There is a guy that did a whole series of these. I'm going to go and find him. Plus, my coach, Richard Woods, has done it. He's another excellent person to watch. Find Richard Woods on LinkedIn. You might get him on Facebook, but LinkedIn. And find his little 1-minute videos, and you'll see someone who's a professional speaker in action. So it's just about being clear, not rushing, and not saying too much. Because remember how we learn? One little bite at a time. Bite-sized pieces of information, because people have got to go away, understand it, assimilate it, and then apply it. That takes time. That doesn't happen like that. That's the whole process of learning. And you're the teacher, don't forget.